Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com or, of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by David Rogers and Joshua Raymond Lee, the editors for Ripley. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey,
Thank
Gordon.
you. Thanks for having us.
One of the things I noticed when I was doing research for this was that you both are listed as editors on all 8 episodes. So usually there's like block setups. I'm wondering how you guys sort of broke down the work uh, between the 8 episodes.
There was definitely a lot of collaboration, even if one of us focused on one episode over the other. But and I wish we had more time to do this. Like I wish I had time to sit more with Josh, just the two of us playing with things. But I don't know. So I think in the end, you feel like you're working on the show and not really thinking about the episodes. This was treated as just a big movie, really, divided sort of logistically into these episodes and dramatically into the episodes. But so I think we just felt like we edited the show as opposed to chopping it into episodic,
Right. Yeah, like the big picture problems that we had to solve, uh, you know, narratively, technically, whatever, ultimately were conversations that me, Dave, and Steve had together, not really things we would do in isolation from each other in terms of the big picture. And then we each focused on different episodes over the course of the show, in a pretty even way, enough to so that when we got to the end, we kind of thought, oh, it makes sense for us to just share credit on everything.
My friends and I would make little videos in our backyards, imitations of Indiana Jones and Star Wars. Eventually that need to tell stories became more of a technical interest and an interest in the art. To me, what's exciting is using cinema in its full potential, which is rhythm and sound design and music. Our job is to set up expectations and then deliver on them. I'm Brian Cates, and this is my course in film editing.
Because when I watched it, I could sort of pick out like, oh, there's Italian cinema, there's noir, there's like all these interesting things. What films or movies or books or did you guys turn to for inspiration when you were building this series?
That's a good question.
Um,
I looked back at I think we both looked back at the other Ripley adaptations, and specifically Purple Noon, the Alain Delon film, uh, which was, I think, the first Ripley film adaptation. And that film even though it's quite a departure from the book itself, it has such a great energy and vibe to it. That for me, that kind of informed the parts of the show that were more comedic and more like lighthearted or romps, and kind of like the adventuring spirit of it as he travels around Italy and all that. That period of cinema, like French and Italian cinema specifically, was like kind of a touchstone for the way that we wanted Italy to feel and the adventure of the show.
Interesting. How about yourself?
well, it's funny. In the course of the editing with Steve, he mentioned Divorce Italian Style. I think that's the name of the movie.
Yeah.
It's a funny movie. It's great, but the look of it and the period of it is really right up the alley of what Ripley looks like. And also, I think as a kindred spirit to Ripley, it didn't have a lot of coverage. It wasn't cutty. Things happened within the frame, and performances and were sort of whole. And so, in a strange way, that to me was sort of something that I drew from to think of how this show sort of was presenting, or looking.
And I felt that like what I found really interesting was it felt very European just in the pacing, like letting things not drag out, but like play out longer. Like I think about the murder scene. It felt felt so longer, but there was so much tension, like trying to get back in the boat. Like, is he going to get cut? That type of thing. Was there like, did you guys intentionally start to draw things out, or did you find that the footage was coming in just sort of right for you guys to cut it?
Well, there's two aspects to it, right? First, it's scripted such that basically, in these two episodes, episode 3 and 5, half of an hour long script is devoted just to a single scene, essentially, and almost like a real time depiction of the process of Tom trying to dispose of a body. So, the way it was scripted dictated the pace of those two episodes. But then beyond that, I was just thinking, the nature of the cinematography that Robert and Steve were going for, these very composed and oftentimes very wide shots were just so rich and detailed that they kind of themselves dictated a pace. This is not like standard television coverage. There's almost no standard television coverage in the show. It's all quite specific and unique, and so just giving those frames there, it just felt like a crime to give any of those frames a short thrift. So I felt we were always trying to balance, making sure the momentum of the narrative continued moving forward while giving each of those frames their proper weight and time.
Well, what's so interesting about the murder is it has this nice ebb and flow to it, because there's moments where you're like almost calmed, and then your tension gets ramped up again and again throughout. So I'm wondering, how do you guys like to approach sort of ramping the tension up for audiences when you're cutting footage?
Well, I think something like that is I can't, speaking for me, I don't know if there's like a particular toolkit you bring to that. Okay, I'm going to apply these principles to it, because I think you have to see how it's playing and feel the pace of it and watch it again and think, okay, well, we're maybe we're a little too quick here because we miss what just happened, so you have to open it up, or so I think it becomes and it's certainly a collaboration with Steve, and so I don't know, I think it is something that you try to do it based on what's happening, what's being depicted, and how you can best sort of give it an ebb and flow that feels good.
Yeah, I think part of the North Star in those murder sequences, tell me if you agree, Dave, was like trying to keep the audience and ourselves as viewers as closely aligned with Tom's state of mind and just physically the process of what he was doing as possible. So, we wanted, as we reworked things and looked at them again and again, like Dave was saying, we were really kind of, we tried to find those, all the nuance we could get out of every given beat where he was really trying to figure something out physically with his hands, or and then I think when you break away from that, like he's trying to get a knot out of the rope tying the anchor to the boat, and struggling, and then he sits back and he's exhausted, and you go really wide and you see him as this like small figure in a vast ocean. I think like playing with the like technically playing with the closeness of what he was doing with his hands and his state of mind, and then opening up to the context, which is so terrible, that he's like the actual gravity and scope of what he's dealing with was like an interesting way to work that drama.
Yeah, and I think also the whole point, or not the point, but one of the main keys to these two sequences of dealing with the aftermath of the murders is to hopefully understand what Tom's thinking and be a part of his, like be a participant in his thinking process. So you want to see, he thinks about, he gets the car keys and he goes out, or he turns and sees the gas cans, and and makes decisions that you are a sort of in on, which is, I think, part of the sort of the fun of these two sequences.
Well, what's interesting, and you kind of touched on this in both your answers, but is the use of close-ups, and that was something that sort of ran through the series for me. So like I just think about the needle on the record player, or just various shots like that sort of stick out. And I'm wondering, was there a discussion about the importance of close-ups for the series, or how did that sort of motif come about?
Yeah, I mean, I think two things. One, I think Robert Elswit's first job as a cinematographer was shooting inserts for The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh.
He loved shooting inserts, and Steve would often say that, you know, they get the first scenes shot in production were the Rome apartment scenes, where he's getting rid of Freddy's body in episode 5, and on some of those days they were spending hours shooting inserts of ashtrays. And at first the ADs or, you know, some people in the crew were going, "What's going on? Why are we shooting inserts here?" And Steve would go, this is the show. It's these inserts. You know, these are the details that really anchor the viewing experience of being in Tom's head."
Well, and it's so different from any other TV show I can think of that there's not, it almost plays more in two shots in other shows and stuff, whereas this one, it feels cinematic in a way, the way it's shot and edited. The other interesting sort of, there's a couple of interesting, I guess, storytelling approaches. So like when Dickie's dad is writing him letters, we see Dickie's dad talking to him. Or, you know, another interesting thing is we look at the newspapers and it changes from Italian to English. Was that stuff like, I'm assuming obviously Dickie's dad had to be shot before, but something like the newspaper, is that something that came up in the edit suite, or how did those things come about?
Yeah, the obviously, yeah, the shooting Mr. Greenleaf reading the letter was obviously something that was shot and it was scheduled. It wasn't like
yeah,
later. But what I really loved was the silent looks back and forth, which is not, I don't know, there's something really fun about those things. But the newspaper headlines was something that was conceived of and worked and reworked and experimented with in post. It wasn't a scripted concept of the translations. And so, yeah, we all, I mean, our assistant editors all took a crack at adjusting and playing with these before we finally started turning them over to the VFX artists, who then went through many permutations of the headline translations. Yeah, it was a fun process to get those right.
Yeah, I think the final product, the way they look, is more or less based on this Avid, like one of the Avid, you know, basic standard text wipes or something like that.
It's just a soft edge going across or something.
Yeah.
Wow. Was there other things like that that sort of popped up in the cutting room?
I'm sure there are.
Yeah.
We'll leave them.
Starting to forget.
Well, I mean, the flash, you know, the sort of flashes to people. I mean, the Greenleaf reading a letter to the camera is more of a scene, but there's a lot of short pops, like little flashbacks, you know, when Tom's talking to Mr. Greenleaf in the hotel in Venice and he says, "When's the last time you saw Dickie?" And Tom thinks about it, and then he sees Dickie's bloody hand reaching out just before he strikes the death blow. That's just something that kind of like came to Steve as an idea to try. I don't know if that was the first one, but there was one of these where Steve was like, "What if we tried doing this?" And we tried it and it worked, and it was fun, and gave sometimes like a kind of somber dialogue scene, a sudden burst of energy. So then we started looking for other places to try things like that, and we ended up having probably like a couple dozen of them throughout the show, if not more.
Yeah, one of my favorites that really surprised me when I saw the cut that you guys had put in was in episode 5 when Tom is dealing with Freddy, you know, trying to pour the alcohol into his mouth, and he pulls the head up, and then you get these cuts to the Caravaggio David and Goliath painting.
Right.
It was great. Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, which also happens later on in episode 8 there with the paintings and the books and everything. And I'm wondering, the point of view for this whole series is sort of from Tom's point of view, but you guys do it in really like a really interesting way. Like I think about in episode 3, he starts talking to Marge from across the sort of, he's looking through the window sort of, and Marge is talking to Dickie and he's talking to him. How much of, because you do that throughout, there's like different interesting sort of POV moments like that. And I'm wondering, like, was there any discovered in the cutting room, or were they all sort of planned out on set?
I think are you talking about those moments where he's looking into Marge's house and through her window? Like,
yeah, I think, well, I was thinking in terms of because that one in particular, it looks like it's properly set up, but it's such an interesting idea the way he's sort of removed from it but putting himself in. And I was
Yeah.
wondering if there was other scenes that you sort of discovered and added that later.
Well, but that was actually scripted that way, that
Yeah.
Tom lurks and looks in the window, and so there's a number of scenes where he's doing that. I don't know, Josh.
He's kind of speaking for other people. I think that they were all scripted. Yeah.
I think so
I'm
too.
trying to think if is there any VO that was purely post fabricated?
Not really. I mean, the letters are all scripted, although not always in the same places where they ended up being. But yeah, I think, I mean, which is one of the reasons I think this show is so successful, is that the scripts were beautifully written and had, I mean, I remember in dailies, because you're getting things out of order, and just the mere fact of dropping a scene into a place where that scene wasn't in there yet, and you feel the dramatic push because now you have this scene, and it's not about the dialogue in the scene. It's not anyone's telling you anything. You just feel this progression because of the next scene. It's hard to describe, but I just felt like that's one of Steve's great strengths as a writer, is that the scenes and what they mean is the storytelling, I don't know if I'm saying that well, but
yeah, he kind of said that in the panel the other night, that it's not so much what people are saying in the scenes, the dialogue itself, as what the nature of the scene is doing in its position in the narrative.
Yeah.
Though it's probably interesting to say that the ends of many of the majority of the episodes are not as scripted. So the end of the first episode, when Tom talks to himself in the mirror and says, Dickie Greenleaf, nice to meet you. That wasn't scripted, actually. The episode 1 ended with him just watching Marge and Dickie sailing away in their boat.
Yeah.
And that scene is just a reuse of a piece of another scene that was in episode 4, where Tom talks to himself in the mirror in the bathroom on the train on his way to Rome. And we just used that scene and that dialogue from that scene at the end of episode 1. And in VFX made that mirror, we fit that mirror and his face into a plate that we had of a bathroom from the hotel he was staying at in Atrani.
Oh, interesting.
To make a different ending for the episode that would be more dramatic.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
What would you say was your favorite film or favorite scene to cut in the series?
Josh?
I guess, I probably would say the second half of episode 5, which is basically an extended single scene, like a 30-minute scene of Tom murdering Freddie Miles and then figuring out what to do with his body, which is at the top of 6 flights of stairs in a building full of people in the middle of Rome. And, getting to tell that story dramatically without any language and without a ton of, props or action, really. It's mostly just a guy in a room thinking. That was like a very interesting challenge editorially, and also just a lot of fun to try to craft.
How about yourself, David?
Well, similarly about the boat sequence, because it is all visual. But getting back to the scripts, I feel like every scene had its important components. So there was always something in any scene that you could focus on trying to get right. But for me, one of the things that I think I have the most satisfaction about, and I've talked about this before, is these scenes in episode 4 with Marge and Tom is packing things away, and it's this cat and mouse scene between the two of them, and there's all this blocking of Tom, and getting all of that to work and flow in a clean and rhythmic way, and was a challenge. And as it started to come into form, it was really nice to get it together. It was really a fun challenge. Yeah.
I have one last question for you guys. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Dave, you go first.
I'll go first. Right now, this maybe seem really silly, Lady Dynamite.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. I was talking about it yesterday with my wife. That's so funny.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, well, we were talking about how she deserves to be a bigger presence, but
yeah, Maria Bamford, yeah. And it's like her funny is a particular thing, and she hits it, it's really great. So, and I mean, anyway, that's my answer.
Apparently this is why we were talking about it, is because apparently the season did well on Netflix, but she felt it was too stressful for her mental health. She stepped back. And that's why I was saying it's unfortunate, because it was doing well. Totally deserves it. But how about yourself, Joshua?
I guess my answer would have to be Curb. I'm on a plane, and I'll kind of scroll through the available new releases or the classic cinema, and I'll see these like critically acclaimed films and go like, I should really watch that, and then I just put on Curb.
Are you sad that it's ended this year?
I'm a little sad, but went out pretty strong, I thought.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview today.
Thank you
so much.
Really great. Thanks.
And that's it for our show this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, or of course on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.